If you're like me and you've already collected all of the released fighters, I think it's time for you to check out some custom fighters.
Today we have Tony Stark from the MCU. Okay, I know. A lot of you already have Marvel fatigue. We have 16 Marvel fighters in Unmatched. I mean, but come on, they didn't give us Tony Stark. I mean, he is like the center point of the entire MCU, so we totally got robbed. And this deck is absolutely bananas, so I have to show you this deck. So please forgive me for showing you a Marvel deck instead of something else, but you are going to love this deck. So starting off, we can take a look at the hero miniature here I have for Tony Stark. I got this one from the Meeple Smith as always, and we can bring in another miniature here from actual Unmatched, Nikola Tesla, another scientist genius here. You'll see the scaling actually works out very well, but the base here is actually quite weird. I believe this one is from Crisis Protocol, the Marvel miniatures game, but Meeple Smith actually has a couple of the Iron Man unmatched size figures here, but I didn't quite like either of these two, so I had to go with this one. I love the posing and the fact that it's just a classic Iron Man figure here. So I'm gonna forgive them for the weird size base, but you can definitely pick up the other ones if that suits you a little bit better. And then we also have 3 sidekicks here. You'll notice they have different art, and that is the beginning of the craziness of this deck. You'll notice they all have different health dials as well. So let's just jump right into the hero card, and this is Tony Stark, a ranged fighter with 8 health. Yes, another start of the craziness of this deck. He only has 8 health. He's very weak, but also extremely strong in other cases, because that 8 health is not going to waver too much, and it's constantly going to be going back up to 8 with how prepared this guy is. This is a move of 2, and then the Iron Legion here, and these guys are all ranged as well, and there's 3 of them. But once again, they have something a little bit different here, because each of them have different art there and different health dials. So they're not all 1 health guys, and they also don't share the same health totals, but we'll go into that in just a second. And then we'll kind of go into the main part of this deck here, starting with the special ability, and it is, if you end your maneuver on the same space as an Iron Legion sidekick, equip it. So yes, Tony Stark will be constantly changing into different suits, and we can kind of go into what equipping is, but first let's also take a look at the setup card here. I can grab it. And this setup card says, separate any cards from the deck that aren't any or Tony Stark cards, and I've already done that. This deck here is all of the any and Tony Stark cards. So that's your base deck that you will start with here. And then it says place the removed cards aside with the respective hero cards. So yes, there's more hero cards here. So I can give you a quick peek here. So there's a Mark 1 hero card with the Mark 1 cards, the Mark 50 here, or the Mark L with their cards, and then so on and so forth with the other cards. I won't spoil any more of them. Then it says your hero may use Tony Stark's cards at any time, but must be wearing the correct suit to use its cards. So you'll see in there, there's cards that say Tony Stark, and he can use them at any point in the game. These sidekicks cannot, as well as he can use the any cards. But there are cards like we saw here with the Mark 50 that they say Mark 50 on it, so he has to be wearing this suit or have this hero card equipped. But we'll go more into that in just a second here. But that's how you set up the game, so we'll kind of show you that in just a moment here once we kind of actually look through the deck. But that's our main setup here, so that I've already done that for us. And the next here kind of explains equipping a suit a little bit more in detail here, and this says, if Tony Stark ends his turn in the same space as an Iron Legion sidekick, or I guess just ends his maneuver there, remove the sidekick from the board. So let's just say he landed on Mark 1 here, you would remove him from the board if Tony Stark landed on the same space as him at the end of his maneuver, and then add any remaining health from the sidekick to Tony Stark. So Tony Stark only has the 8 health, but with the Mark 1 here, so a little bit of spoiler, but only has 3 health, you would add all 3 of that health to his health dial, but it cannot go above 8 there. So he's equipping him and fully taking him with any damage that he already has. And then it says replace your hero card with the matching suit. So once again, if we take the Mark 1, you will place that on top of your hero card, making you be equipped with that suit. And then lastly, it says add all cards that match the newly equipped suit to your hand. So in this case, you will add all 3 of these Mark 1 cards. But I don't want to spoil the suits just yet. We can take a quick look at the Tony Stark deck so that we kind of know what we're working with before we decide to equip these suits. But I guess before we can go in that deck, we can also quickly take a look at the sidekicks here. And you will see the first sidekick here we have is the Mark 1 suit. This is the one from the first Iron Man, the first suit that he makes, aka the Mark 1. And then he has the hero dial here with the Mark 1, and then you see the arc reactor with that kind of rusty metal base around it. That's one thing I love about this deck. I made all the health dials, the different arc reactors from each of those suits here, and he only has 3 health, so not just the 1 health Sidekick token here, but with 3 health, so that is pretty nice. And then next here is the Mark III, another suit that you saw from the first Iron Man movie. It's the first colored one that he has and has for most of the movie, with that same arc reactor here, and he has 5 health, most of the 3 sidekicks there, and it's the same on the back there. And then lastly here, we have the Mark L, or the Mark 50, and this is the nanotech suit that we saw in Infinity War with that triangle-shaped arc reactor with 4 health. So we have a 3, a 4, and then a 5. On top of the 8 that Tony Stark hears. I realize we did not look at his health dial, but this is the more, I think, iconic glowing arc reactor that we're used to. But kind of filming all the 4 different of the arc reactors that we've seen. But yeah, let's take a quick look into his card back here. You can see this one is also going to be left in the description for you guys. When I first made this, I put this blue outline on the outside, and kind of wish I would have changed it like a dark red or like maybe this glowing white there, but whatever. It's already printed, but this is the card back. I do like the shadow of Iron Man there. Yeah, starting with the Tony Stark cards, once again, this is the ones that only your hero can use. Your sidekicks cannot use this, and you can also use it like no matter what suit he is wearing. This is a 1 versatile for Tony Stark and 1 boost 3 copies, and this is never needed the suit. During combat, if you don't have a suit equipped, aka just your Tony Stark card here, his card's value is 4. So one thing I really like about this deck here already, you are balancing whether or not you want to be equipping the suits and healing or getting those extra cards, or even just being Tony and making these 1s all into 4s. So you really have to choose the perfect moment to equip the suit or not equip the suit. It's really kind of a fun little gamble that you're playing cat and mouse with yourself there. But next here, another Tony Stark versatile of 3 with 1 boost 2 copies, and this is Reckless Fighting. After combat, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter in your fighter's zone. Replace your hero card with Tony Stark. So this is another interesting one here. It actually forces you to change back to Tony Stark whether or not you had an equipped suit. And once again, I do want to reiterate with those suits that you will be equipping later on that I will show you. While you have it equipped, you can use all of the cards that have the same name, but once you lose that suit, you cannot use those cards and they become dead cards. So this is definitely a card that you want to use at the right moment. You don't want to lose that suit if you need it for later, or if you plan on using this for your second action or next turn, you might want to use this to get rid of your suit so that all your other cards here become better if you have that never need the suits. That's all of our specific combat cards that are for Tony Stark himself. And then we can move on to his schemes here. So a scheme for Tony Stark here, 1 boost 1 copy, and this is Donut Break. Gain 2 health, you may split it between your fighters, so you can do 2 to Tony Stark here, or 1 to him, 1 to a sidekick, or 1 to each of the sidekicks, or 2 to 1 sidekick, as you know here. And then your opponent does the same, so doesn't technically be super helpful if you're getting 2 health and they're also getting 2 health. If you don't have a suit equipped, this once again making it so you have to have the suit equipped or not for the perfect moment, you gain 5 instead. So you gaining 5 that you can split up how you like, and your opponent gaining 2. So once again, you want to save that for whenever you don't have a suit equipped. And then next here is another scheme for Tony Stark with the 1 boost 1 copies, and this is Max Power Thrusters. Move your fighters up to 5 spaces, gain 1 action. So a great card, just kind of gets all of your fighters moving. You'll see that he has a move of 2, but that will change depending on what suit he has. So sometimes if you have a move of 1 with some of our slower suits, you really need to turn on the thrusters here and get all of your fighters to the the best positions for whatever combat you're about to start. So a very fun card. Of course, you can gain that action, so you still get your 2 other actions once everybody's positioned in the perfect spots. And then next here, we happen to have a card named this. This is another Tony Stark scheme with 1 boost 1 copy, and this is I Am Iron Man. Replace your hero card with any suit. Don't add its cards to your hand. So as we saw before with that Mark 1 suit, you have all these cards the same Mark 1, so you will not be getting these cards if you're preemptively getting this suit. But let's say you've already equipped this suit, and now you have these cards stuck in your hand and you no longer have the suit. You can use this I Am Iron Man card to get that suit back on you so that all of those cards become usable again. But you only have 1 of these, so you really, once again, need to plan for the absolute perfect moment to use this card. And then next here, which we'll see, we have those 3 suits that we can equip from the Sidekick tokens. There's a few in the deck that we can equip. First one being here is Project Veronica. This is the Hulkbuster suit that we've seen in Age of Ultron, a Tony scheme with 3 boost 1 copy. And this card has many cards in your hand as you'd like. Gain 1 health for each card discarded. So once again, it makes all those dead cards from old suits useful. You get to discard them and heal, but once again, I do have to point out that you only have 8 health, so you can only heal so much. And this says equip Hulkbuster and end your turn. So if it's your first action, you don't get to use the second one there. I can quickly give you a quick look here. We have our Hulkbuster card here, but we'll take a look at all of those in just a moment. So that's Project Veronica. And the next here is the Mark V suit, or Mark V suit for Tony Stark's scheme. 1 boost, 1 copy, and this is equip Mark V and gain 2 health. And then this is that suitcase suit we saw in Iron Man 2 when he's on the racetrack. And once again, I can quickly show you a quick glimpse into what that might look like. And that is our last scheme for Tony Stark. And then moving on to our any cards, this is one of my favorite cards in the deck. I just love how themed this is. And this is a 6 attack for any with 2 boost, 2 copies. And this is stand down. During combat, if your opponent didn't defend, this card's value is 0. So I said I love that theming there with Tony Stark, about to blast you with a 6 here. But if you can't defend, it's not worth anything. You're surrendering, so he's being peaceful. So mostly with these huge cards that you have, you kind of want to wait for the perfect moment when you think your opponent can't defend or does not have any cards in hand. But if you do that with this card, it's just a 0. So you want them to, defend with like a regroup with 1 value or just something low. So you can get these crazy big 6 attacks off. And that is all of our attacks for any. Moving on to our 2 versatile for any. This is 1 boost, 3 copies, and this is Repulsor Blast, so something that all of our suits are going to have there. And this is after combat, deal 1 damage to an adjacent fighter and draw 1 card. And so what I like is that it doesn't specifically say your opponent that you're attacking or is attacking you, so you can attack with 2 to 1 fighter and then blast another fighter with 1 damage, and of course drawing a card to replace this, and you got 3 of those. And then next here we have some common cards for Iron Man here. And this is any card with versatile 1 boost, 3 copies, and this is regroup, one that we all know very well. After combat, draw 1 card. If you won the combat, draw 2 cards instead. Moving on, we have Momentous Shift here, another any card with 3 versatile, 1 boost, 2 copies. And this is during combat. If your fighter started this turn in a different space, this card's value is 5 instead. A card that we all know very well. And something that you might notice, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but this deck only has 20 cards. So kind of a theme with this deck being that Tony Stark is both, equipped with the entire world, of all these different suits he can equip and fill up his hand and have all these different, cards for different opportunities. But he also has basically nothing. He only has 8 health as his total max that he can heal back up to, and his deck only has 20 cards, so he's gonna be fatiguing pretty fast. So definitely a guy that you don't want to be moving around too much and drawing too many cards because you're going to fatigue way faster than anybody else. But yeah, now let's start with all of our tokens here. I believe we already kind of looked at everybody's health tokens, but we can start with Mark 1 here. So if Tony lands on Mark 1 and equips this, he will be adding this to his hero card and to his hand. So this is Mark 1, changes Tony from a ranged fighter to a melee fighter. His health doesn't go to change to 3, it just kind of shows you what the starting health is for Mark 1 there. But his move changes to 1 instead of 2, so it actually slows him down to equip the suit. So hopefully some upsides, which, spoiler alert, there are. This is reduce any damage taken from combat by 1, so kind of a half Luke Cage effect here. And then we still have that equipping effect, so he can then equip a different suit, but then he will lose this Mark 1 suit, making all of these cards not worth anything. But yeah, so when you equip the Mark 1, just to recap, we will be turning into a melee fighter with a slower move of 1, but all of your combat damage is down by 1. So let's just equip that onto Tony there. But when you equip Mark 1, you'll be adding all 3 of these cards to your hand, usable right away, starting with a 5 attack, so very, very strong. And this is built in a cave, 3 boost, 1 copy. After combat, replace your hero card with Tony Stark. So it's super, super strong, but it destroys the suit that you're in. So definitely want to use this last instead of these 2 here. We got 2 big defenses here, so kind of a theme with Mark 1 there, with reducing damage and having 2 defenses to use. But this is my turn, a defensive 1 for Mark 1, and this is 2 boost, 1 copy. After combat, deal damage to the opposing fighter equal to the damage you took. So very, very fun. So I like that it's nice and low, so if they attack you with a 6, you take 5 damage, but they take 5 damage. So that's a fun card. And then next here is a 4 defense for Mark 1 called Fireproof, 1 boost, 1 copy. Pretty self-explanatory, just a nice, good defense. So 2 defense cards and an attack card. So potentially you could defend twice. Of course, you'll have other cards in the deck there. And then right when you're ready to be done with the suit, you've already used up all 3 of the cards. You can attack with a big old 5 and destroy the suit that you're wearing. Very, very cool. And then next here, we can take a look at Mark 3 here. So when Tony Stark lands on Mark 3, you will be equipping this suit. And this one is a ranged fighter, so don't have to worry about that melee again. Of course, he's that Sidekick there starts with 5 health, but then he moves up to 3 moves. So actually a bonus there from the move 2. And once again, whenever his move is at 3, all of you and your sidekicks get to move 3. So definitely very, very strong. But he has no special ability. So his special ability is just that extra move 3. So you will equip that on Tony Stark there, and then add all 3 of these cards to your hand, starting with Stand Your Ground, a attack of 3 with 2 boost 1 copy. And this is during combat. If your fighter started this turn in the same space, this card's value is 5 instead. So kind of actually a juxtaposition between the fact that you get that move 3, but this is discouraging you from making a move on your start of your turn. You actually want to have them come to you. Very cool. And then the next here is a defense 3 for that Mark 3. And this is 2 boost 1 copy, and this is Analyze Fight Pattern. After combat, if you would have taken 2 or more damage, ignore it and deal 2 damage to the opponent. Okay, so they'd have to attack with at least a 5, so not super common, but it's kind of cool that you ignore the damage and then deal 2 damage to them instead, because you have learned what fight pattern they're coming up with, fully dodge it and dish it right back out to them. And then our last card here for Mark 3 is a 2 versatile with 1 boost 1 copy, and this is Faster Than a Jet. After combat, you may move your fighter up to 2 spaces. Okay, so once again, moving closer or moving away from them. And that is our Mark 3 cards here. Once again, I do want to reiterate, you get to add all 3 of these cards to your hand, but once you lose this Mark 3 card off of your Tony Stark card, you can no longer use these. They're just kind of dead in your hand. I guess you can use them for their boost value, so a few of them are 1s and 2s, so not too bad. And then lastly here, our last Sidekick token, the Mark L, or the Mark 50, or I guess the nanotech suit there. When you equip this one, it is a ranged fighter with 2 moves, so no changes there. But it says at the start of your turn, transfer health between your fighters. Basically what that means is that, Tony Stark has 8 health. You can move as much of that health as you want to a different fighter, or vice versa. You can kind of mesh all of the health together whichever way you see fit at the start of your turn. With that nanotech kind of moving between the different fighters. So very, very cool. So we can equip that on Tony Stark there. And then this first card here is a 2 attack for Mark 10 or Mark 50 with 2 boost 1 copy, and this is Nanotech Stompers. After combat, deal 1 damage, then move your opponent 1 space. So I believe it means deal 1 damage to the opponent and then move them 1 space. You're attacking with 2 and then you're smacking them with your stompers and pushing them back in space. Very cool. Next here is the Nanotech Shield, and this is a 2 defense with 1 boost 1 copy. Immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. So we got a feint here, but obviously it's versatile instead of, defense instead of versatile. And then lastly, a scheme for Mark 50 with 2 boost 1 copy, and this is Nanotech Blades. +1 to all combat cards this turn, gain 1 action. So I believe that means your combat cards, but gain 1 action. So very nice. It's almost like the nunchucks from Bruce Lee. So not crazy cards here, but obviously you get some strong effects here with being able to basically gain that health from the sidekicks without having to equip them. So a very, very unique one there. And then lastly, we had those 2 scheme cards. We can start with Mark V or Mark 5 here. And then this is a ranged fighter with 2 move. Doesn't have an ability, just keeps everything the same basically. But if you remember the scheme for Mark 5 here, you gain 2 health. So that is basically what you're getting, is the 2 health and then 3 cards here. So starting with Mark 5's attack card, this is an attack of 2 boost 1 copy, and this is Intimidate. Immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. Okay, it's cool. So this is another feint, but this is an attack instead of a defense. So instead of a versatile, you're splitting them up into an attack and a defense. And then as you can see, this is that suitcase suit where it's kind of like, it kind of built itself up around it. I think this is probably my favorite suit that Tony ever had. Just super cool that the suitcase transformed into it. And then next here is a 0 defense, okay, with 1 boost 1 copy, and this is Eject. During combat, ignore any damage taken. After combat, move your fighter 1 space and replace your hero card with Tony Stark. Okay, very, very thematic there. I mean, literally, you're letting the suit itself get completely destroyed. You're stepping back with Tony and then going back into Tony Stark. Very cool, very thematic. Oh, that's a very, very fun card. And then here is a 2 versatile with 1 copy, 1 boost 1 copy. And this is Repulsor Blast. So one that we've already seen here, just, I guess, the 4th Repulsor Blast instead of the 3 you've already had from your deck. After combat, deal 1 damage to an adjacent fighter, draw 1 card. So yeah, exactly the same as the Repulsor Blast from the deck that we've already seen. You're just gaining an extra one here. But once again, only usable whenever you have that Mark 5 suit equipped. But yeah, we can look at our last suit here. So this last one here is the Hulkbuster, another melee. So we had that Mark 1 that's melee, and the Hulkbuster is also melee. But he becomes a move of 1 instead of a move of 2. So once again, slowing you down and making you a melee fighter. And this says, if you were to take any amount of damage from combat, ignore it and replace your hero card with your most previous hero card. Then discard any Hulkbuster cards. You cannot equip a new suit while using the Hulkbuster. Okay, so this one becomes very, very interesting. So you can only use the Hulkbuster until you've taken damage. So there's no option here. It says anytime you are about to take damage, you ignore it, and then you have to re-equip the old suit. So I do like that you get to re-equip the old suit. So if you were wearing the Mark 1 and then you put the Hulkbuster on top of it, once you take damage, this falls off. You go right back to the old suit instead of going back to Tony Stark there. But you also lose any Hulkbuster cards, so you cannot use them for boosting or for discarding with that one card to gain health back, which actually I believe is the Hulkbuster cards. I guess you wouldn't be able to do it anyways. But you get five cards here with the Hulkbuster, and they all look pretty strong. So we will see here that maybe you potentially won't even be taking any damage. So this first one is a versatile of 4 with 3 boost 2 copies, and this is Mega Repulsor Blast. After combat, deal 2 damage to an adjacent fighter, draw 2 cards. So yeah, just our Repulsor Blast, but it's the Mega version. This is doubled, and the damage is doubled, and the card draw is doubled. That's very, very cool. And we get 2 of them. And then next here, okay, so this will stop you from taking damage. This is Reinforced Armor, a defense of 6 with 3 boost 1 copy. So yeah, I guess if you don't want to take damage, that's a nice big defense card there. And then we also have a scheme here. This is Unstoppable Force for the Hulkbuster, 3 boost 2 copies. Move 5 spaces. You may move through opposing fighters. Deal 1 damage to each fighter moved through. Okay, so yeah, so when you equip that Hulkbuster, you can just start blasting right through them. But one thing you do remember, if you remember right from the scheme in the deck, is that once you equip it, it ends your turn. So your opponent has the chance to attack you right away or ping you with a damage, and then you just lose the suit because you took a damage. So you really need to position yourself correctly so that you won't take any damage, and then you can bust on through with that Unstoppable Force and then, you know, mega repulse them and just absolutely destroy them with the suit. But once again, you're not going to be taking any damage while you're in the suit. So sometimes I guess it's just protection until the next turn. But yeah, let's take a look at my final thoughts. Okay, as you guys saw, this deck is absolutely bananas. I mean, we could have just gotten this, you know, just a solo fighter Tony Stark with his own deck and his own health dial. But instead, we also got to play with the Sidekick that is equipable, which is a fun effect here with the Mark III with his own health dial and token. And then we also had here the Mark 1 with his own cards there, his own token, and his own health dial, as well as the Mark 50. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. The Mark 50 here with his own hero card, his own cards, his own token and health dial, as well as 2 other suits. Once again, we get 5 total suits here, not including the regular Tony Stark here, just making for an absolutely fun fighter. I mean, what other fighter here has, what is that, 6 different hero cards that are kind of cycling through? I mean, we got that with Moon Knight, where it's constantly cycling, but this one is a choice. You get to equip it or dequip it depending on what the best situation is. So a very, very fun deck. I definitely recommend it. Kind of rounds out your Marvel collection there, finally adding Tony Stark with this also very, very cool effect. Once again, it's super crazy, but he's also super, super fragile, which I like that. It's like, you know, you get, you know, all the treasures in the world, but if you take 8 damage, you're gone. It doesn't matter what you have, you're gone. But very cool. If you want to make this deck for yourself, let's take a look how to do that. So if you'd like to have this deck for yourself, starting with the miniature that I used here, I got that from the Meeplesmith. You can give them an order for that one there. And then if you also want these Sidekick tokens that I used, I will leave the artwork that I have for each of these tokens in the description. But this is just the little plastic tokens from BoardGamesMaker.com. I'll leave a link in the description for those exact pieces there. And then the health dials here are also from BoardGamesMaker.com. And I will leave the artwork for all 4 of these in the description as well. And then these little rivets in the middle are just extra that I had from the boxes. But also Board Games Maker, just the 2-inch cardboard cutouts. I'll leave the link in the description for all of these things. And then lastly here, if you would like the card art, this is going to be from Unmatched.cards, and our creator's name is here, ShadowSide. And then you get things actually printed, also Board Games Maker. And I'll also leave the link in the description for the card back that I use. But yeah, I gotta go. My toast is burning.